That is such a valuable piece of advice there.
These are the sorts of things that we should talk about right in the first 5 minutes of the podcast.
Started giving people free quotes.
Isn't sunshine and rainbows, and isn't, everyone sees you doing so well.
For just being a solo
The
operator.
change in mindset makes a massive difference.
Welcome to Aussie Lawn Stars.
Hey, Alvin, welcome to my dungeon. We're in Aussie Lawn Stars land at the moment. How are you?
Very good yourself, Gary.
Hot, sweaty, and
Yes.
feeling the humidity. 36 degrees is not comfortable in a dungeon, I can tell you.
No. Well, it's not comfortable for Victorians, and that's pretty much what we have today is a bit of New South Wales, Queensland weather, and thunderstorms are pretty unheard of down this way. So, feeling the enjoyment with you.
Yeah, I half expected you guys would be in single digits still.
Oh, it shot up the weekend. It just went through past 30, and it's been stuck over 25. But like real weird, upper New South Wales, Queensland type weather since Saturday, like thunderstorms and rain in the morning and muggy. And so, yeah, it's been a bit unusual, especially this time of year. Usually we get this later in like January, February.
Yeah, well, I'm feeling a bit like a Queenslander or a Mexican myself at the moment, sitting in 36 degrees. And I spoke to my parents a moment ago. They've been travelling from Broken Hill. So they actually travelled from Perth, but from Broken Hill back to Newcastle today. They had still an hour and a half out, but they've been travelling in the thunderstorm coming in from the west, beating it back home. And I think it's going to hit here about 9 o'clock tomorrow morning if we're lucky.
Bit of a cool down then.
I'm looking forward to the cool.
Yes, for sure.
So anyway, Alvin, we should give people a brief introduction to you as well. I think everyone knows who I am, but people will be wondering who I'm interviewing. Now, typically I interview people who are in the industry. Most of my interviews are people who are doing lawn and garden contracting or landscaping work. But occasionally we interview somebody who is in the distribution networks in the industry, and that's where you come in, right? So you're working for Tomcat?
Yeah. I've got two hats on today, and we'll probably, as we have a conversation, we'll probably straddle both sides of it. I look after Tomcat Australia, and Tomcat's the brand of equipment, the wood chippers and stump grinders and a couple of other bits and pieces that we do. So I look after that part of the business, but then at the same time, I'm a small business owner in the services end, where we've got our own tree services business too.
Okay.
Which the tree service business has been going for about 6 years. And we'll get to a bit of history of how all of that started, which is the relevance, I think, in the conversation we're going to have today. Lots of learnings on that end. The equipment side's been going for about 12 years now. And before that, I actually came out of the corporate world, banking, insurance, that kind of stuff, spent probably 15 years there, and then just, as a kid, I always loved being outdoors. I grew up on a farm and everything. I said, big smoke's not working for me anymore. It's not doing it. And did a 180 and, got into the equipment initially. And then as I started to get to know the tree business, it was absolutely fascinating, all aspects of it. And then ended up, I think had a bit of a baptism of fire, because I decided to go and do my qualification to become an arborist. So I went to do what's known in the industry as a Cert 3 in arboriculture training. It was dual fold, because one, there are so many different aspects to the industry that you need to understand, technical aspects, but service aspects, OH&S, all those bits that you don't always get exposed to. And then obviously from a networking point of view, it allowed you access to all levels of people within the industry that you can have conversations with during SMOCO, whatever. Basically two hats, one kind of equipment and sales. And after after sales service and equipment servicing and technical parts of that, and then the services part, which is the tree business that we run in conjunction with the equipment.
Yeah, okay, nice. So one of the questions I have not got an answer to at the moment, I've had other people ask me, and I'm like, I'm not sure about this. So Tomcat Australia represents the products, the equipment that you sell.
Yeah.
Are they made in Australia?
No, they actually made in South Africa. Some of the
Okay.
components are Australian.
Yeah, okay.
Mainly the trailers, just so that we could standardize from a parts and servicing point of view. We stick them all on Australian trailer parts, so that you don't have to
easier to
shop.
meet the ADR or whatever registration requirements.
Not just that the European stuff, meets that as well, but it's hard to get parts for them. Like they've got all kinds of weird brackets for the toe eaches. The hubs are different sizes. The bearings are different sizes. The electric brakes. Well, they don't actually use electric brakes that often in Europe and Africa. So just making that part of it easier. And then the rest of it on the equipment side is pretty easy because, everything's built in South Africa. We almost roll out all the stock straight out of the container, fuel them up, do the trailer conversions, and they're ready to go. So there's no sub-assembly that occurs, really, except maybe for bits of parts. The chutes on some of the bigger machines that are too high for the containers, we'll bolt them on, but essentially, there's not a lot of work when they arrive. But built in South Africa, and then we look after the shipping from the factory, doing all the compliance and imports and those things over this end, and getting the services parts to the dealerships that we have throughout Australia. So we look after from head office over here. We look after the independent dealer network. Supplying them with parts and service and those kind of bits and pieces.
Yeah, okay. No worries. I was unsure how Australian Tomcat is, but it seems like they're quite international. But certainly what you do in Australia is unique because you're building them, not entirely, but you're certainly making sure they are suitable for the Australian conditions with what you're doing.
We've just, the two American brands are the two we compete with mostly in the commercial space. In the lower end, we got a couple of Europeans, a New Zealand brand that we kind of compete with as well. But there are some differentiations, and I'm not going to go into too much detail. But the design of our chippers is different to a lot of the smaller ones.
Yes.
So I guess you can, from a use case point of view, you can probably argue that there's competition, but they're two different classes.
I think there are crossover units in terms of machines that will cross over between what you build and what other companies build that are comparable to some degree but still different, right? So I look at, and one of the first topic we want to dive into sort of deals with this a little bit because I've looked at using chippers over the last 15 years. And when I first looked, I looked at the Hansa units, which are the New Zealand machines. I think they're universally accepted as Australasian or New Zealand and Australian in terms of their unique market. They are a slightly different build design. I ended up buying a Green Mech 4-inch machine, which I think they come from the UK or Europe somewhere, but I'm pretty sure it's UK.
Yeah, I think they just put the motors on over here. They get the build and then they put the are they Briggs and Strattons that are on them?
Yeah, mine's got the Briggs. It's the 18 horsepower. I think it's pretty sure it's a Vanguard unit.
Oh yeah. They typically get the motors cheaper over here because of where they are built, rather than shipping them there, mounting them, getting them back. So I could be incorrect, but I know a lot of those units, the engines are fitted locally. So yeah, they're pretty good unit size. Yeah.
But when we're talking about me and my listeners, we're going to get a diverse group of people. Most people are going to look at a unit like I'm using and going, "Oh, is it portable enough to put in a trailer to be able to get in and out of a trailer easily. And I'm going to say mine's pretty challenging to get in and out of the trailer because it's almost 200 kilos. And if you're using pneumatic tires, try and lift it up a trailer ramp, it's challenging, right?
Bit of fun,
But it's that size where it's made to be wheeled around and then transported and then used in individual small garden jobs where you're putting, they call it a 4-inch machine or a 100 mil machine, I think, roughly.
Yes.
And you can get a Hanser, you can get the Green Mech, you can get a bunch of different brands. The Tomcat unit in the 4-inch machine. There's a lot of different options there. Mine. Efficiency is the thing that rules a business and the decisions you make as a small business owner. Right Mowers give you the options in their product lineup to match efficiency with size, fuel usage, and the type of jobs you want to target, from catching to mulching or side discharge, from roadside verges to acreages and manicured lawns to 6 feet tall and super long. I've been using the Right Stander I 42-inch with a Catch Pro for manicured areas and the Stander ZK61 to maximise productivity for large open acreage mowing. If you need to replace your push mower, try the 32-inch Stander B. If you have more open access to residential properties, there's a 42 through to 48-inch option that suits you. And if you want to enter the acreage market, the 52, 61 and 72-inch machines have choices in engine size and model type to suit the work you want it to do. Right Standards go the distance, saving you time and money season after season. Is similar style to a Tomcat in that it uses a drum with blades on it. Yeah. Whereas some of the other units will use different mechanisms. Often they have a disc with blades on like a weighted disc so that they've got the momentum of the disc to keep them spinning. But I've seen numerous machines in this category where they're really aimed at home users. And it seems like a massive gap in the market going from home users to arborists.
Yes.
But then at the same time, while it's a massive gap, it seems like there's not a lot of sales for units in that mid-size.
Yeah, and you can do the same thing when you're looking at log splitters and some of the other chainsaws. Overall, I would say from an operational point of view, drum chippers are superior to disc chippers, and you'll find that a lot, especially up north where you've got a lot of palm and stringy type material when you're processing it. The disc chippers, if you don't run them with super sharp knives, they tend to clog up very easily. Disc chippers take a lot more wear and tear, especially when you're getting to hardwoods that are getting to the 4-inch size. Because of the perpendicular cutting action, you've got a lot of mechanical force on the disc and the drive shaft, then the bearings and the rest of the machine. So you get a lot of vibration where drum chippers, because they are cutting in a linear fashion to the material being fed in, they're a lot more forgiving, especially when the knives aren't that super sharp, and they run more efficiently, more effectively. So wear and tear overall is less. I guess a question that everyone has to ask themselves is like, how often am I going to use it? Am I going to use a log splitter to do some firewood, twice a year? What's my investment in that going to be? As opposed to, how often am I trimming fruit trees? How often am I doing hedges that, require a bit of processing, doing a wheelie bin or a barrow full of mulch? And that's where you do the cost comparison. Although us and Hanser are in about the same price range. And then it comes down to how many hours you want to put on. Like anything, you got to pay a bit more for quality, reliance, serviceability, those kind of things. So I guess the other bit that I don't like about the kind of mums and dads weekend type machines for our services industry is they're very unreliable. And as we all know, if you have breakdowns on the job, if you get blockages, all that kind of frustration adds up very quickly if that's happening on a fairly regular basis. My first chipper years ago was one of them little electric Azitos that you get from Bunnings, and I
Yeah.
paid like $250 for it or something. And it
Yep.
was amazing because I was feeding through, some straight potassium branches like an inch thick, and maybe some fruit tree prunings, and I get this beautiful little bucket of mulch at the bottom. But then the moment I started putting any foliage through or any skinny stuff that didn't fit through there, and you had to try and start shoving it through, and the next thing you hear the machine having a whinge and nothing's coming out the bottom, and then you spend 20 minutes opening it all up and blocking everything, putting it all back together, just for another 5 minutes of chipping.
Yep.
And that was just me in the backyard. It absolutely drive me nuts. So if you were
Yeah.
doing that and you're getting paid for the work and you're wasting that amount of time on doing those kind of things, it is just better to invest in something that's built for that specific job rather than just the odd couple of hours here and there. So
For sure.
so that's probably your main choice. And again, if you are doing larger stuff, if you do regular pruning, formative pruning, those kind of things, and you're getting closer to the 2 to 4 inch range in terms of what you need to process, I'd probably go towards drum chippers more. You'll have less breakdowns. Your knives last longer. Your belts last longer. Your bearings last longer. Overall, the machine lasts longer, especially if you're doing, harder woods, a lot more volume. If you're doing, a half a trailer load of mulch in a day, that's a fair bit. And as you know, with your chipper, it takes a fair while, or you want a machine that processes quick enough so that you're not, spending half of the day just mulching everything up that you've pruned. You want to get through whatever
That's
you've
right.
pruned in 10% of the time that it took you to do the actual pruning work. Your mulching time should be, no more than maybe 20% of the overall time that you spend doing pruning and cutting.
I guess this is where we get stuck, the consumer level machines, and I think a shout out to Cox, Bushranger, Greenfield. There's a bunch of, and I've got Cox and Greenfield on my shirt here today, but there's a bunch of machines there that are designed for consumers. So they're putting their garden mulch through. They're doing a little bit of home pruning and putting it through, and it's kind of like your Azedo unit in terms of going, well, it can handle a little bit of work. It's made for a home user or a consumer. But once you start going, okay, I want to put in, and take my machine, for instance, it's a very typical size for somebody who's in the service industry, but they're not doing a lot of chipping. 4-inch machine. Yeah. My understanding, and you would understand this better than me, so jump in and talk over the top of me, please. But a 4-inch machine is not really going to do 4-inch logs or 4-inch branches. They're made to be able to do that as a maximum, whereas ideally you're talking smaller branches, like if you say 1.5 through to 3 inches of maximum diameter of the wood, and then once it starts pulling a bit of foliage in, like you say, it means that it can allow for that size branch with some foliage coming through. Whereas if you pull a 4-inch branch through, it's working pretty hard.
Yeah, and again, that's where the drum chippers are a bit more superior in terms of being able to pull. Now, just for the viewers, most of the chippers in this size range, 4 inches and smaller, are what we call gravity feed machines, and hence there's no feeding system like the bigger machines that the tree contractors and the councils and things drag around, where the machine is feeding itself at a pace that the cutting mechanism keeps up with the gravity feed machines. The cutting action of the knife pulls through the material, but obviously that creates resistance, and there's no control over the amount of resistance, which is why when you get to the bigger stuff, it starts slowing down a lot, and you can end up stalling the cutting mechanism and then the motor.
It's also worthwhile noting in this size machine, because there's no speed control on how quickly it pulls something in. Wearing your wedding ring or your watch can be a dangerous thing when you're feeding a machine like this. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. So gravity feed machines, until you get used to them, and especially the size machines we're talking about, it, I'll call it a lot of fun, but it can be a bit off-putting and scary initially, especially when you're getting to like the 3-inch size branches. You got a 4 or 5 meter length of straight potassium that you're spearing into the machine. and
Yeah.
it flies through. Then you got a bunch of stuff flying out the other end, and there's lots of
Yep.
noise, and the motor's revving up and everything else. So,
Yep.
but it's if you use it often, as you know, it's very effective, and you can just stand there and chuck branches in, and
Well,
it'll chew them up as quick as you can chuck them in.
you'll get a bit of a laugh out of this.
Yeah.
My first experience with a real chipper, I hired a machine, what's the brand? The Red Roo.
Oh yes,
I think that's what it's called.
yes, yeah.
I hired a machine and it had a auto feed on it.
Oh yeah.
So it was a tow behind your vehicle trailer setup, probably around the 25 to 30 horsepower size machine. I think it was around 6 inches, but it might be between 6 and 9 inches or something it's supposed to be
Yeah.
able to handle. I come from a gardening perspective, right? So I'm pruning, doing a hedge reduction on Photinia.
Oh yeah.
And when you're doing a hedge reduction on Photinia and then you're going to put it through a chipper, if you've got some experience, you'd think about the shape and you would make spears.
Yep.
Whereas
Yeah.
it's kind of hard to do that with Photinia. So I've got these balls of Photinia I'm trying to get into the auto feed, and I'm going, this auto feed is useless.
Yeah.
my
Yeah,
bad, but yeah.
Yeah. No, you learned your lesson, and I guess the same goes for the gravity feed machines too, because you want to
Yeah.
kind of make them into spears. Otherwise, you can frustrate yourself again trying to
Oh, yeah.
get wobbly lemon trees and those kind of things fitted in there. So yeah, that's the other. Besides having the actual chipper, the other thing that you learn very quickly is how to cut for the equipment that you have.
Correct.
If you've
Yeah.
got a machine that can feed itself, you cut differently. In that case, you cut as thick a branch as the machine will chew, and you give it about 3 or 4 feet of clearance so you can get in the auto feed, and then it does the rest by itself, and it'll suck in all the side branches and so on. But when you're working with a gravity feed machine, you want to reduce the amount of foliage so it doesn't compress at the end, because then it doesn't have anything to cut to, and that's a bit of a learning curve.
Yeah.
When you buying these machines, because you think, and as a lot of people think, is like, this big mouth, you just throw everything in that mouth and it magically turns into mulch at the other end, until you
Yeah.
get to use it, and you very quickly realize that's not it. It is a very efficient machine at reducing volume and creating more space in your trailer, or putting a whole head of a tree into a wheelie bin. But you need to know how to use it, and you need to know how to prepare your material so that you can effectively use it.
Yeah. Now, in early days in my business, the first winter was really slow. I didn't have enough work, and I went and did a bit of work with Farmer Ken up the road. He does tree lopping, and so I was just helping him load his chipper, and he's got a industrial size Vermeer. It's still a tow behind machine. It feeds through that machine straight into the back of his truck, and the Vermeer, I think, could.
Probably an
I can't
18 or
remember
a 15-inch size machine around there.
Oh,
That's
massive.
what a lot of them is. Yeah.
Like you're picking up whole gum tree logs and feeding them straight in there. 20 meters long. Just winch on the back, pull the log from the middle, and get it started, and then you let the auto feed off so you can remove the winch before it loses it.
Yes.
And the experience between that and what I do is vastly different.
Yeah.
But we want to take a bit of a dive into a topic around the differences or the similarities between doing tree work and gardening services, because there is a lot of crossover there.
Yeah,
and in terms of the use of the machinery, from a gardening perspective, we're going for the smaller machines. Like I'm talking 18 horsepower on mine, but if you go Hansa, they've got everything from like a 5 horse through to a 25 or somewhere around there.
correct. Yeah.
I think your 4-inch machine, what's the horsepower on that?
That's a 14 horsepower on there.
14 horse, yeah. So it's right smack in the middle there. For gardening people and even for tree loppers, a lot of crossover jobs will come in here where you're pruning smaller trees or you're doing a hedge reduction, and the chipper on site while you're doing that work allows you to make easy work of some of those jobs.
Yes. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, there's a lot of crossover in terms of people doing tree work and people doing gardening work, whether they're doing the same kind of work, but also when it comes to how you set up your business and
yes,
whether you're running solo, whether you're running a team of people.
Yeah. and it'll be amazing for a lot of guys to in the maintenance, the property maintenance area, to realize that I'd probably say unless somebody inherited a business or bought an existing business, a tree business of somebody else, the natural progression in a tree business is almost 100% the same as a gardening service, because you start off somewhere where you've got a passion for this. You're learning. You don't even know all the gear. I remember when we were sitting in the class and these guys were rambling off, chainsaws and 661 this and 300 that, and I was like, man, like I was so out of my depth. But you shouldn't be put off by it. It's this is just because they've been around for a long time and they understand what they do daily. But the tree business starts in the same way. Like, you've got a passion and maybe you can afford a little chainsaw and you got a ute. If you're lucky enough, you can borrow your dad's trailer every so often, put some stuff in the back there. And I saw many a guy start off and, he'll get a job from a referral, or maybe a couple of flyers that he's dropped off, or iPad, wherever the job came from. Many times it's a referral. And they'll be doing the pruning, chucking it all in a big cage trailer, and then standing on top of that with a chainsaw, cutting it into bits so that they can compress it a bit further.
Been there, done that.
Into the trailer. Yeah, all of us. Like, I promise you, I did the same until I got my first little 4-inch Tomcat, which got me rolling. But then, and that's how everything grows. And then you go, okay, well, I've done a couple of jobs. I struggled with this one because that little chainsaw I had was too small, and I was working my backside off, and the job took 2 hours longer than I expected. So I've got to upgrade something, and I'm going to upgrade to that. And then I'm spending too much time chopping up the branches in the back of the trailer. I've got to reduce it in a better way. And then you start looking at chippers and mulches, and you just keep on progressing and taking each one of those steps. And so there's no different than a lot of the guys that start off in the tree services industry. They'll be doing a tree pruning, and it happened to me last week where we were doing some conifers, and they had some of these volcanic rocks in the garden that they wanted removed, or they wanted to shape it up differently. And he says to me, can you guys landscape this as well? We want to do a bit of a retaining wall with it. And I'm going like, I'd love to, but that's not our expertise. We don't have the gear for it. I'll have to go, hire some excavators and whatnot to do all that for you, and I might not do the best job I can. And so at the end of the day, it's you just got to learn as you go along, and but you become that trusted person. You become that person that the customer knows is going to show up when they ring you to come and do the quote. You're going to show up on time. You're gonna if something happens, you're going to let them know, but you're going to show up. You're not just going to wait for them to ring you back and go, hey, when can you do the quote for us? Show up for the quote. Start building that trust. When you get there, try and be as professional as you can. Quoting, as we all know, is a massive learning curve. I always equate quoting to cricket, because sometimes the umpire's call goes for you and sometimes it goes against you. But in the long run, it all evens out at the end of the day. Like, I've done jobs where I've ended up paying the customer, $500 or $1,000 because I'd never done a tree like that before. Didn't realize how much it weighs, and all those bits and pieces. And then you got the other end where you quoted the job and you get there and it takes you 20% of the time, and the customer's happy to still pay you because they still get the outcome. So but you have to pay attention to that and refine that. And then when you're doing the quote, build that trust with the customers. I think a lot of that's paying off for our tree business today, where I reckon 80+% of our business is referrals and repeat. Now it's slightly different, I know, with the regulars that garden guys have, regular servicing, but when it comes to new business coming in the door, that's referral gets built through time, through you delivering, what you said you're going to deliver. If something goes wrong, owning up to it, fixing it up for the customer. Our biggest problem in the tree business is fences. So dropping the small those fence palings. They like eggshells. You just look at them in the wrong way, and a bit breaks out of it. So, dealing with those little kind of things, when you accidentally drop a branch on the paling and the paling snaps up, owning up to that with a customer and getting things done, and then when the customer's accepted the quote, showing up when you said you're going to show up, making sure that you're ready for the job, having all your gear ready. The chainsaws are sharpened, everything's fueled up, get to the job, get it all done, get it done properly. All of that at the end of the day, and that's probably one of the biggest things I learned, was all of that builds trust at the end of the day. And that customer ends up trusting you so much that they will give your name to their family, their friends, their neighbors. That grows more business for you. But they come to you for all kinds of other things, from building retaining walls to what kind of plants they got to put in the garden, to do you know a pool guy, do you know a fencing guy, do you know a roofing guy. They start relying on you for all of those kind of things, which is a privileged place to be in, but it's something that you have to spend time on to get to that space. But it all pays off immensely in the long run.
Hey, you. Yes, you with the moist grass on your bare legs. This is a new year and a new podcast. I'm asking you to join me in some changes made just for you. I want listeners to join the new Facebook group for Aussie Lawn Stars. If you're not listening to this, just skip the first 30 seconds. But for everyone who wants to listen and would like to contribute, join Aussie Lawn Stars Facebook group so you can give me feedback on existing episodes and content ideas for more episodes. But more importantly, it's a place you can ask questions. The simple questions may get answered by members in the group already, much like you would find in any community group. But the questions will fuel and feed future episodes. More importantly, if you ask a question in the group or on the YouTube comments section, you may get sucked into the dungeon where your question and you become a feature episode. In short, join Aussie Lawn Stars on Facebook, YouTube and Instagram to participate and engage with me directly and other listeners who want to help or be helped.
Thank you for listening to Aussie Lawn Stars. Please remember to rate and review the show on the Apple Podcasts app or the player you use. Exciting new shows are released every Monday. Make sure you follow or subscribe to hear the next episode.